colleagues.
Thank you, Chairwoman Johnson and Ranking Member Lucas. Appreciate conducting the hearing today, even though it's Randy Weber sitting in. So that's good. And Ms.
Will the gentleman yield?
No, I will not yield to you, sir. I thank you, Secretary Perry, for joining us today, and I congratulate you, Secretary Perry, on the excellent job that you are doing at the Department of Energy. And I think it's amazing to see what a deregulatory agenda coupled with pro-growth policies can do to benefit our economy and national security at the same time. I'm also encouraged by the administration's commitment to a long-term strategy for viable and competitive nuclear energy and to developing the necessary infrastructure to meet our nation's energy needs. Nuclear energy is particularly important to my home state of Arizona, where nearly 30% of the state's electricity comes from nuclear energy. The Arizona Public Service, the largest electric company in the state, serves 2.7 million people and operates the Palo Verde Generating Station, which produces more than 70% of the state's clean energy. The Palo Verde Nuclear Power Plant is America's largest source of clean air energy, providing over 2,500 jobs and generates an economic impact of more than $2 billion, all while emitting no greenhouse gases. Secretary Perry, you visited Arizona in February, where you stated that President Trump is focused on having a diverse energy portfolio that includes nuclear energy, and we're glad that you came out. I'm personally glad that you came to Arizona to see what we're doing there. You also stated that America needs to continue to be engaged in the development of the next generation of nuclear power. And so, Mr. Secretary, I'm wondering if you would please elaborate on the Department's efforts related to the development of the next generation of nuclear power.
Speaks, thank you. The Advanced Reactor Technologies Program is what you're making reference to, and we're doing the R&D on that as we speak to address the long-term technical barriers that we have, and SMRs is part of this, and I think, from my perspective, increased funding for micro reactors. And micro reactors, this is particularly of interest to the DoD as we live in this world. And I know we're going to talk about resiliency at some point in time today of the grid and what's going on. But Mr. Waltz, from a military standpoint, having these micro reactors, even smaller than our SMRs, to develop the power in some of our military operations is going to be tantamount to our ability to perform the national security mission that we have. We're continuing, and I'll talk with some specificity here, the DOE is continuing to support the development of NuScale Power. That's their efforts to complete the licensing process and begin to commercialize the design and build associated with the supply chain that they're going to need, the commercial deployment of those reactors, and that's happening at the Idaho National Lab up outside Idaho Falls, and 2026 is the projected time frame on that. So we know, look, the key for us is we're going to have lower capital costs to build these nuclear plants. I mean, we all recognize that with the challenges that the civil nuclear program has got, reducing the schedule, times, and the costs that go into to building those. We need to be focused on the supply chain, keeping it in the United States, and the components that are fabricated by U.S. companies for this, and again, getting back to when we're able to do that, Madam Chair, we're going to be able to send the message that, number one, our energy supply is going to be harder to disrupt. So whether it's a cyber attack, whether it's a natural disaster, all of that is going to be directly affected by these advanced reactors and the development of those.
So, Mr. Secretary, with regard to that, we've talked about private enterprise and their role in this. How do you incentivize the private sector to participate in this and accelerate the science with this?
Yeah, well, I think one of the fastest way you incentivize the private sector is for government to get out of the way, from a regulatory standpoint, from a cost standpoint. So both, and I don't want to. I don't want anybody to walk away thinking that I have left somehow my understanding of how states function. States have to be very engaged in this process as well, and state governments not be an impediment to the development of these technologies as well. For that matter, states not be impediments to the development of an all-of-the-above energy portfolio for this country. So I would suggest to you one of the best ways that we can send a message that we want you to invest in this is to make sure that either by permitting or regulatory fiat, we create more of a hurdle for these companies to be able to bring their product to the market.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bonamici.
Thank you to the chairwoman.